Good morning everyone. Some of you will know me. I'm Karen Wild. I'm a service manager at Schools ICT. As Mark just said, I'd like to introduce Nick and BoxPhish to you. It's a new product that we've added onto SLA Online for schools, and you can buy it under the Schools ICT section. Now, this product is designed to help with one of the major challenges that we feel is coming up in the education sector, but not only in education, but also in the commercial sector as well. And it's cybersecurity. And cybersecurity, we feel, should not be just seen as a techie problem. Ultimately, it is your staff that are the front line of defence. And you would expect your staff to challenge a stranger that is seen in the school grounds, and you have the processes and training in place to do that. And we're going to introduce this software to you today, this product, to allow you to train your staff in how to challenge or question the stranger that is coming in mostly via email, and to ensure that your staff recognise the dangers when it occurs and what they need to do. We've found that the education market is being targeted more and more, and we're seeing more and more incidents that are crippling some education organisations that they hit, and the costs are very high to get these problems resolved. And we do need to do more to help you prevent these issues. So we've gone into partnership with a company from Leeds called BoxPhish, who are able to deliver cybersecurity awareness training to staff. I'll now hand you over to Nick from BoxPhish, and he can show you what we're able to offer.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Karen, thank you so much for the introduction there. You did a really thorough job. So I think from a perspective today, we're certainly looking at the human element of cybersecurity with a big focus on the education sector. So I'm going to share my my PowerPoint that I've prepared this morning. So can you hopefully see that okay? So yeah, we're going to be talking about the human firewall. So the relationship between cybercrime and people. I've been really looking forward to this session, and thanks NYES for letting me be part of the day. So it's really topical at the moment. There's been a big spike in education attacks, particularly this side of 2021. So in the last 3 months, we've seen a significant spike in sophisticated cyber attacks making its way through their network. So what we're going to do is focus on what we can do as kind of educational business leaders to make sure we're doing everything in our power to stack the odds in our favour of staying safe. So quick intro to me. Karen's obviously kind of provided an overview, but I'm Nick Deacon, Elliott, VP of Operations at a company called BoxPhish. So we've been running for about 3 years now. We've got 150,000 learners across the group. We've got a big focus on the UK education sector and not-for-profit, and it's around kind of EdTech has obviously provided a huge amount of opportunity, as kind of Caroline mentioned, and it's important that it really stays as part of the longer term kind of DNA and plans for education sites, but it's got to be used safely. We've got to make sure that our end users know how to protect themselves against the cyber threats that are certainly out there. And that's what we've done. We've created a software platform that's going to identify risk areas and educate your end users around what the threats look like and what we can do to mitigate them. And we are based in Leeds. So there's 5 kind of key areas we're going to go through. It's not a sales presentation by any means. It's certainly more around the kind of what we can do, some practical advice, and really shedding some light on what the actual threats are. So we're going to be looking at the connection between people and cybercrime, so the human element. You'll hear me refer to kind of human factor and the human firewall, and they're the phrases that we use in the industry around using your people as a defense mechanism rather than kind of a potential vulnerability or weak point for the organisation. We're going to look at some threats to the UK education sector, so what we've actually seen out there and the kind of damage it's doing and where it's coming in from, what we can do to stay safe, how we can create a programme that actually works and delivers the value that you want, and then looking a bit further beyond just our staff and looking at students. So how can we make this programme inclusive for everybody? So hopefully a super powerful presentation and kind of 20 minutes. So I'm going to start off with a question, and I just want everyone to have a little think about what their answer would be. So, what percentage of cyber attacks are caused by human error? And I'll jump straight into the answer, conscious of kind of time, but 95% of all successful cyber attacks are caused by human error. So IBM did a, see Ryan and Mark have got the, so you got it nail there. But a lot of people don't think it's that much. I think the key piece is successful here. So the system layer is going to stop a huge amount of cyber attacks. So what I refer to as the noise. So people trying to get into your network, regularly bombarding your kind of IT systems and data. But we're talking about the sophisticated ones, so the ones that have done the research and they've slipped their way through the net. And 95% of those are resolved by human error. So the rest of the presentation is going to go into a little bit more around the actual threat and then what we can do to help ourselves. So we know from the cyber attacks that are making our way into the education sites that a big chunk of them are coming in via the inbox. So 74% of cyber attacks start at the inbox. So anything we do or put in place specifically around the training and the attack simulation, we've got to have a big focus to start with around inbox safety. So I'm going to come on to that in a bit more detail, but big majority start at the inbox. The next piece I want to shed some light on is the 14% of global phishing is aimed at Microsoft 365 account takeovers. So albeit a relatively small percentage in terms of the overall kind of phishing industry. So it's not so much the scale, it's more the damage it causes. So this is the kind of thing that really keeps IT managers and IT directors at schools and MATs up at night, is somebody getting inside the Microsoft 365, getting access to the data, email inboxes, installing things. So we really need to make sure that we're targeting how to spot the account takeover attempts, what to do if you think you've logged into a fake Microsoft page, and how you can kind of just stay safe, particularly around Microsoft. So I'm going to come on to that in a bit more detail too. And then the final stat we'll look at is 7 out of 10 organizations currently don't invest in a human cyber risk program. And I think that shows that there's real opportunity out there for you not to become a statistic. So there was a stat I read last week around it's not a matter of if, it's when, in terms of a successful cyber attack. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's a lot we can do to put the odds in our favour, but we need to get ahead of the curve, and our people absolutely must be part of everything that we are doing. So the final piece around kind of what the threat is before we start getting into what we can do is some example recent attacks. So there's been a significant amount of attacks in the education sector this side of 2021. And here's some snippets of ones just in the last month or so. And what we can see is that the sophistication is going up, but also they're not just targeting back office systems and data, they're looking at impacting the students as well. So these guys have no mercy. You know, they will take down emails, they will destroy data, they will destroy coursework, they will disrupt kind of students' lives, which it's been so disruptive over the last 12 months anyway. You know, the thought of getting your coursework deleted just before your exams, or you're trying to get into university, they really are kind of nasty people, and we've got to do everything we can to keep them at bay. So what can we do? We've got to look at A, what the guidance is telling us at the moment, and B, putting a plan and structure around it. And there's a quote that I really like from David Cork, who's the Director of Education and Skills Policy at the Association of Colleges, because I think it really cements what BoxPhish is about. So we'll start with that, then we'll work through the plan. The guidance at the moment is that we've got to look wider than just systems, so kind of further than just the technology layer, and we've got to include supporting leaders, teachers and students to recognise threats, mitigate against them and act decisively when something goes wrong. And that is exactly what BoxPhish is about. So it's identifying where the threats and risks are, giving everyone the best practice on how to stay safe in their digital kind of life, whether they're a student, a teacher, a business leader, and then really importantly, what to do if they think something's gone wrong. So really sound advice, look further than the systems. And one thing I want to highlight as well before we kick on is that anything I talk about now around staying safe in your kind of work life is as equally important for your work life as it is your personal life. So spotting phishing attacks, spotting logging into spammed websites, setting and managing strong passwords on your online applications. They're going to protect you from scams that exist in your personal life and your work life. And I think it's really important that this isn't seen as just additional kind of workplace training. You know, teaching staff particularly are pulled from pillar to post, and there's got a lot of demand. So introducing additional lengthy training is not going to be well received, but bite-sized awareness that's going to kind of protect you in your work life and your personal life is going to be really valuable. So the good news around everything that we're going to talk about now, around the solutions, is that it's quick to implement and it's not hugely expensive to run programs like this, and you're going to start seeing benefit within a few days. So the first thing that I always ask any of our customers is kind of the why. So what we're trying to achieve. And I know the obvious answer is to protect ourselves from cybercrime, but actually there's kind of a bit more to it in terms of the planning of a program. So are we trying to get to a security compliant culture where there's seriously positive impact, but it requires a lot of focus, investment and time? And a security compliant culture might be the reporting of any attacks, the sharing of news on things that are going on internally or externally that could be relevant, posters in teaching rooms, classrooms, mentions at kind of school gatherings around data and staying safe online, and also having people, you know, regularly having unique passwords and two-factor authentication, things like that. So some really good best practice is going to take a lot of time to get to, but you're going to get a lot of value from it. Whereas with some of the kind of sites we work with, if they don't do anything at the moment, which might be quite common, maybe there's a quick introduction as part of the onboarding process, but really that's as far as it goes. Maybe just starting with a risk assessment. So, you know, how likely are we? Let's look at what the threats, what the damage to the threat could be. Could it really be severe in our network, or are we actually okay? So do a risk assessment, then maybe share some best practice on kind of spotting phishing emails and managing passwords, but build in blocks and get the buy-in from your end users before we just go kind of all in. From nothing to all in can almost overwhelm people and you actually get the wrong outcome. So it's around getting up to security compliant culture, but in a staggered approach that everyone can kind of digest. And then over the last, what will it be now, 3 to 3.5 years, we've developed this, what seems very simple, and to be honest, it's quite a basic model, but it works. It's a proven process to reduce risk, and it's 4 steps, and we just almost rinse and repeat it. So step 1 is identify where the vulnerability sits. So who are my high risk users, or if you're a MAT, who are my high risk sites potentially, or departments. Then educating everybody. Doesn't matter what role you are in the organization, you should, if you've got access to an inbox as kind of a default, you should have some training on what good safe cyber behavior looks like. We're then collecting some amazing data across steps 1 and 2. So how can we provide some insights reports back to the SLT team on kind of where we're at and are we trending in the right way? And then finally, kind of as I've already said, repeat it. So this isn't a once a year or once when you join. This is a cycle that we just keep working through. But the key message being, and I will keep highlighting this, is it's not a big burden for staff. This is 1 hour per year, but we deliver the plan in a 5-minute interval. So it's a 5-minute test and train per month. And I'll come on to a little bit more about that in a moment. But this isn't a big lengthy burden. So we're going to look at 3 areas now. We'll look at the plan. So how we go around structuring a program, how we go around identifying where the vulnerability sits, an example of what a course looks like, and then an example of an insights report. So if we look at successful cyber attacks, they are sophisticated, they are well researched, they are well planned, and they've slipped the technology layer. So it's important that we put ourselves in the shoes of a successful cyber criminal and do some of that research. So we would typically work with your IT team to understand the kind of applications your end users are familiar with. So things like, do you use Microsoft or Google? Do you have a canteen on site that maybe offers coffee and cake and sandwiches? And you know, that sounds ridiculous, but we've seen schools be taken down by somebody sending what seems to be on a Friday afternoon, you get a free slice of cake with every kind of coffee in the local cafe, and you download a voucher, and actually you're installing some kind of, you know, something malicious onto the network. So we've really got to get under the skin of the site and the organization and what your users are used to, and build a tailored testing program around that. And then the next piece on the education, so what the good looks like, we've got to look at really the priority. So where are we seeing the attacks come in from? So we're seeing them come in from emails, from phishing, from research online into people's social behaviours, from impersonating suppliers and finance people to get invoices paid that aren't legitimate, and then for installing things that lead to ransomware. So what we need to do is create a program that prioritises where the biggest threat is, and update that as the landscape changes, which it kind of is an ever-moving beast. So we will create this cadence and then just let it run. So each one of these courses is a 5-minute exercise per month, and every user by default would get one test. So one, whether that be an account takeover attempt, a download a voucher, and then a 5-minute course. So a test and train per month. So I'm going to jump through what the fish actually look like. So here's an example of an organisation that are quite heavy on LinkedIn. So we sent some emails out to end users to see who would try go through and click some malicious links. So to an untrained user, this looks like a legitimate email to verify my LinkedIn account. Now, what we want end users to do is almost build a mental triage. So were you expecting it? Yes or no? If it's a no, then we need to go a little bit deeper. So is there a domain that doesn't look legitimate? So if you hover over this, it's taking us back to BoxPhish, not to LinkedIn. This isn't an authentic LinkedIn domain, it's what's called a spoof domain. So there's some things that don't look right. And if it maybe wasn't an email from LinkedIn, it could be an email from maybe the head or a governor saying, please do X, Y, Z. Is the tone of voice typical to what they would ordinarily send? Is there maybe more urgency and emotion than you would expect? So we're really trying to get you to do something quickly. So we've actually got to look for triggers in the language as well, that end users can start to do if they're not expecting the email. And it's important that we think we're not trying to scare our people here into not doing anything behind the PC. It's definitely not around that. It's not around training or educating with a kind of a stick in the carrot or stick approach. It is really just around giving that information, that support to allow people to be safe, because the use of technology is only going one way, and as such the opportunity for cybercrime is kind of only going one way too. And then what we can do is start displaying 404 pages and things. So we don't have to kind of go to on-demand learning if somebody's engaged with a test. We don't have to make a big deal of it within our end users. We could just do white pages or 404. So we're still collecting the data on kind of the risk and where the vulnerability sits, but we're not kind of alerting end users and causing any additional stress in the job. And some customers go down that route, some don't, and I'll show you some other options, but it's certainly a good one. So the next example I'm going to show is an account takeover attempt. So this is something that I alluded to earlier that really does keep our IT team up at night. So people getting inside Microsoft, and how it would ordinarily work is there's an email like this. So we don't see something that there's been logging that we don't recognize, or a security challenge. So you need to click here and do something. And it would take you to a website that appears to be Microsoft, but it's not. What it's trying to do is harvest your credentials, so eventually they can actually get inside and do some damage. So you think you've reset your password, done the right thing, but actually you just exposed it to a cyber criminal. And it's things like the domain won't be a Microsoft domain. You could have checked the link, or the best thing to do is probably just log into Microsoft via the Microsoft login rather than through an email link. So some best practice that's just going to reduce that risk. And then we can lead, if we want to be a bit more direct with, you've clicked something you shouldn't have. It wasn't a real cyber attack, but it could have been. You now need to look at these things, or sit a course, or whatever it might be that your course of action is for people that kind of engage. But what we will see is over time, the amount of people logging into these websites and clicking the links significantly reduce, which as time goes on is reducing that threat landscape for a cyber attack. So the next bit is around the educate, and I just need to jump into a screen share with audio quickly. So the next piece I'm going to show you is educate. Hopefully that's now I'm going to pull through the audio. So bite-sized content delivered monthly is the message here. So we've developed over the last few years a learning management system. So we host some cyber specific content around staying safe online, password management, phishing. You get an email to say click here to take your course, and it will take you to a portal like this, and it's going to give you the format of the course. So in this scenario it's video with a few questions, and it's going to take me about 5 minutes. So I've got to
2 minutes left. 2 minutes left.
Okay, that's fine, thanks. So what it's going to do is it's going to show a I'll let this play.
When browsing the internet, it is vital that you stay aware of what you're clicking on or downloading and what websites you're visiting, especially when using a device within your company's network. Clicking on unknown links, attachments, and
so conscious time, I'll kick on. So it's a short 2 to 3 minute video, very practical advice on how to stay safe online, with then 5 multiple choice questions at the end, and we're gathering who's kind of engaged with the courses, who's watched them, then the assessment score at the end. And I'm coming to an end now. What we're able to do is provide some really good reporting for your SLT team, business managers, IT, on what your risk score is. So what's your percentage of engagement? Are there any kind of high risk users? Have they done the training? What our training journey looks like. So it's a data driven dashboard pack delivered monthly that's just going to give you an overall score on how that's going. And then finally, we've got to include our students as well. So there's a lot of attempts on students. So making sure they stay safe online. You know, EdTech has created a lot of opportunity for students for remote learning and things. Social media is obviously going one way as well. So staying safe online around making sure people are who they say they are, looking at what best practice on social media is, so not oversharing details. If you're being bullied, what support's available. So it's important that whenever we're looking at a program around this, that it's not just our staff. We've got to include our students in that approach. And that's it. So just on the buzzer, I think. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and then I'll drop back. Thank you, Karen, Simon. Are there any questions around anything that we've been through there?
No. Why do you think there has been a rise in edu attacks, do you think, Nick?
Okay, yeah, good question. So I would say the cyber criminals have got more wary of how easy it is to, you know, how many education sites are underprepared. So they're an easier target generally than corporate. So I think that, and also the value of the data is really important. You know, without email access, for example, you know, we're seeing MATs having to shut schools, and I think that's leading to ransomware payments being made. So kind of seeing it as an easy target.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much. Well, I have to move on to the next presenter now, Nick, but thank you very much for your presentation. It was really interesting, and I'm sure it's an offer that will be of real interest to schools beyond North Yorks as well. So thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today. Thank you.